Miller, Johnson, Snell and Cummiskey were in their 40s and associates at the McCobb and Haney law firm in the Trust Building. And they just didn't feel appreciated. They didn't feel that they had the opportunities that they wanted lawyers to have. And as a result, when they founded their firm, one of their focuses was, quite frankly, to treat people with respect, to give attorneys opportunity. When they split off on April 1, 1959, they didn't have separate space in the Michigan Trust Building from McCobb and Haney, so they just put up some dividers. That they had to work that out over a few months and I think some litigation. But one of the funny parts of the story was on April 1, 1959, an associate had been given an offer to come to McCobb and Haney. And that person walked into the office and had to make a decision. Fortunately, he became the first associate at Miller Johnson. That was Steve Brandstorfer, who became one of our very successful and very excellent litigation lawyers. They were very interesting people. They were very different. But this was an example of the sum of the parts being greater than each of the individual parts. Bob Miller. Bob was in the corner paneled office of the firm.
He was, in many senses, a child of the Depression.
Bob was a very serious individual, didn't joke around a lot.
A haphazard dresser, not uncommon to see that he had come to work in two brightly colored socks, but of different colors.
He had great client loyalty, and he was known for that.
I think that's something that set the tone for the firm, is that he was a big one, avoid legalese, write in plain English.
Bob Johnson was a wonderful, magnificent business lawyer.
He was a fun-loving, partying type of individual.
He had a principle that he followed, and I think our other business lawyers adapted that, and that was, for a deal to work, it's got to be fair to both sides. And he brought in major clients to the firm.
One of which was Peter Cook, who had Transnational Motors, and then Mazda Great Lakes, and now the firm represents the Peter Cook Foundation.
And many people don't know this. He's the lawyer who brought to the firm Meyer, Inc.
Bob was the type of person that you would feel very comfortable with.
Art was a graduate of Grand Rapids Central High School. Then he went on to Harvard College, where he was a starter on the Harvard basketball team, went from there to Harvard Law School, and then ended up as a lieutenant in the United States Army during World War II. We only found out later, after his death, that he had received the Bronze Star for heroism during the Battle of the Bulge and actually calling in artillery on his own position.
He served in World War II, but he never went back to Europe. He would always go on vacation to the South Pacific, and he never talked about the war.
Art ended up marrying his secretary, and true to the firm's fairly ironclad anti-nepotism policy, then she stopped being his secretary, at least officially.
He and Betty would invite a new lawyer and his or her spouse out to dinner in the Civic Theater, which was a real passion of his, along with a more senior member and spouse.
He would often arrange to pick you up, and he had, I think it was a Volare station wagon,
A 1974 green 3-on-the-tree Volare.
He lived very modestly in a pretty small home in Heritage Hill.
He brought in a bag lunch every day and would eat it in his office in the corner of the 8th floor.
Same thing every time. Sandwich, banana, and 2 little Nestle chocolate squares.
He would pick up paper clips that he saw on the floor and was very concerned about the neatness of the firm.
Boy, he had a great memory.
He was one of the most precise attorneys I've ever seen.
Very meticulous.
A wonderful technician.
Art had a real passion for excellence.
He was a brilliant guy. I still am administering some of the trusts that he created in the 70s, and they were just cutting edge.
He represented many of the firm's largest corporate clients.
Art had developed a close relationship with Fred Meyer. As a result, the firm was doing a lot of Meyer work before Meyer took work in-house.
And helped the family be able to maintain a great deal of that wealth, which they've used for many significant purposes.
Art was an incredible part of this firm and was managing partner for many, many years.
Art worked on Saturdays, which means we all worked on Saturdays.
Most of us would come in casually dressed on Saturday mornings, but not Art.
He would always have a coat and tie on, and he would bring donuts in on the weekend.
We would come to the office and do mostly nothing until Art left at 12, and we left at 12:15.
That was Art. I guess I would just say excellent, humble, very caring about, and fiercely supportive and defensive of Miller Johnson's lawyers.
And then we get to John Cummiskey.
He was the consummate labor lawyer.
He had a reputation as a fierce negotiator.
He negotiated with people like Jimmy Hoffa. He was so respected by the other side.
Around here, he's known as the Gray Ghost because you never knew when John would be around.
He was infamous for giving associate attorneys unexpected major responsibility.
John Cummiskey was going to start the meeting, talk a little bit with the client, talk about what the problem was.
He would say that he had to excuse himself for a minute, and midway through there, he's gone.
And get up and say, Bob's going to take care of you. He's on top of it, and leave.
And then expect the younger lawyer who was there to simply take over for him in his absence.
So they might be going off to a hearing of one kind or another, a grievance hearing, whatever it might be, thinking that they're basically there to carry his bag and maybe do the driving. They arrive, the hearing is about ready to start, and John turns to them and says, "You're in charge," and leaves the room.
So John had a secret. He always called clients at night and usually at their home, and they'd call him and they'd think, boy, this guy's working 24 hours a day. He's just so busy working.
Here's this guy who represents large employers in labor negotiations, but his focus also was, how do we make sure that the justice system works for everybody?
For all people, not just for corporations and those with significant assets.
There's no justice for anyone unless there's justice for everyone.
And everybody can afford a lawyer or to have a lawyer provided for them so that they can be fairly defended.
John Cummiskey, who was a very conservative Republican, back in the 1960s, joined together with a very liberal Democrat, Sergeant Shriver, who ultimately founded the Peace Corps, and together they were the key people testifying before Congress that led to the establishment of the National Legal Services Corporation, which is today our legal aid.
State Bar Award for pro bono is named after John Cummiskey.
He was a president of the Michigan Bar Association at one point.
He was ethical,
Outgoing and gregarious.
Very down to earth.
John was the most social guy in the world. Friendly.
Very warm.
He was bigger than life, both physically, very impressive, and in his mannerisms.
John Cummiskey is a legend.